Welcome. My name's Guy Dauncey, and this is the show Change the World, where I like to have on as guests people who are really digging in and making a difference with a positive, determined vision of what they want to, how they want our world to be different. And today we're talking to Renny Talbot from the Rugged Coast Research Society. Welcome, Renny.
Thank you, Guy.
Renny's a marine biologist, an adventurer, a marine coastal habitat specialist, and the Rugged Coast Research Society are specialists, adventure seekers, and lovers of our beautiful planet. But that doesn't say the half of what you're really up to. So in a nutshell, tell us what you and your guys are getting up to.
So in a nutshell, we are trying to shed light on the environmental concerns and issues in remote habitats in British Columbia. And so we're doing that through mapping marine debris accumulation in different locations. And we're cleaning up these locations and bringing light to the amount of debris that we're removing from these areas. We're also trying to inspire people to take action, whether that be to have your own cleanups and help through a restoration perspective, or to have advocacy for change, yeah, such as a reduction of this waste into our environment.
Yeah. So I know that you and your, how do you call yourselves? A gang, a group? You're a whole club of good strapping men, right?
Yeah, we're a community, I would say, and we're growing.
You're surfers and paddleboarders before you got into this, right?
That's correct. Yeah, that's how we got our start. Actually, we love to adventure and surf remote locations, and while we were out there, we started to see the pollution and wanted to bring that to the light and try to do something about it while we were out there.
Yeah,
and we had the skills and the resources to access these locations where others don't. So we felt it was our responsibility to do something that as much as we could anyway.
Yeah, so some of our viewers may have heard that phrase, which we're familiar with, which is by 2050, there'll be more volume of or weight of plastic in the ocean than of fish. If we continue doing, devastatingly heavy, fisheries and throwing plastic in. But there's a particular piece that I really wanted to focus on with you, a particular kind of plastic, the EPS, expanded polystyrene. It sounds like a chemical name, but what is expanded polystyrene and why is it such a big problem?
Well, expanded polystyrene is, some people would recognize it as styrofoam. Actually, I have a piece here I can show you.
Yeah, let's have a look at this.
Yeah, so this is expanded polystyrene. You see it in packaging. In the marine environment, it's used often as flotation. It's very cheap and accessible. And people use it for flotation in the docks, to lift up their float homes, in industries such as aquaculture facilities, to float net pens and things like that. It's a very cheap product, lightweight. It's about 95% air. And then it's basically a whole bunch of little styrene balls that are placed together.
So the industry says that expanded polystyrene is extremely green, doesn't have any sort of ozone depleting gases, doesn't have any global warming impact, it doesn't weigh very much. And that's right.
yeah, that's the guy for sure. It's the problem with it is that it is very challenging to recycle. It costs a lot to clean the product because it has to be very clean before you can recycle it. As well, it has to be compressed before it can be shipped to a facility to be clean. So all of that handling and dealings is a cost. It's costly and time consuming. In the marine environment, it also, when it releases, it moves quickly because of its air masses, and it's very light, so it can blow away in the wind. It can float quickly in currents. And once it's on our shores, it breaks up quickly. All the little balls can be released.
I mean, we will have the photos of you with these great big blocks, like 6 foot wide blocks of this stuff. And it might seem innocent, but take that block you've got in your hand now and imitate the emotion of tides on rock. Just pick away at the corner and show what happens.
Oh, my wife will hate me. I'm going to make.
Well, just one or two little bits, because I'm going somewhere.
It's like, this is very limited effort, and it just breaks apart into little tiny shreds. And when you put that with some storm force logs pounding against it, it doesn't take long to break it up into billions and trillions of.
So I did some math on this in preparation for talking to you. So a little styrene cell is 200 microns, or 100 of those per millimeter. But then they expand it, they put air into it, and it ends up at 1.2 millimeters, or for every centimeter of length, you've got eight pieces, which means every cubic centimeter has got 8,300, and every cubic meter has got 8.3 billion cells in it, one for every human on the planet.
Wow. Yeah.
And when you think that just that there's one little block like that is going to be tossed on the tides and on the logs on the West Coast and beaten up and beaten up and beaten up, because one of those blocks can dissolve into 8.3 billion tiny pieces, each of which looks like fish food, right?
Yeah. Well, it looks a lot like fish eggs.
Fish eggs,
so,
okay.
Yeah, because of the round nature and kind of white color to it. Fish eggs, like herring spawn, for example, when the sun hits it, it creates that white kind of color. And it's found in the very similar locations in the intertidal zone. Birds, other animals, they're accustomed to eating these forage fish eggs. And unfortunately, this is what we're finding. The tide lines is filled with polystyrene balls that look a lot like the fish eggs. So there's no way for animals to distinguish food.
Renny, put your marine biologist hat on and tell me more about the impact on the fish and other marine species.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the obvious impacts, Guy, is the ingestion. So fish will eat it. It will disrupt their digestive processes, which will potentially lead to starvation because you can't break that material down. In addition to that, polystyrene, along with other plastics, are really good binding sites for toxins, like persistent organic pollutants that are in the ocean. Instead of settling out into the sediments, they'll bind to polystyrene and other plastics. And then fish and other animals will eat those and get the toxins in themselves. That will find its way through the food chain and other animals and potentially into us as well. So it's yeah.
Does a cell like that bioaccumulate in the body, or do they pass it out with fish poop?
Yeah, no. So there's definitely toxins that have the potential to bioaccumulate and move up the food chain and become more concentrated and more harmful as they move up the food chain.
But will it biodegrade inside a fish's body, or will it sit there as a little inert cell?
It will sit in a fatty cell, and yeah.
So if a salmon eats a small fish and then an orca eats the larger salmon, will they accumulate inside the orca's bodies?
Exactly. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
And have they, to the extent that they very rarely get to do an autopsy on an orca, are they finding this kind of stuff?
To my knowledge, they're seeing toxins in primary predators and high level trophic level animals more readily from the research that I've seen. Its potential is coming from multiple sources, but plastics is a likely source of that. Yeah. So when we look at the big blocks, because I know there's all the other marine debris, plastic, the bits, the other stuff, but this is the big one I want to focus on today because it's got this billion-fold impact, right? Yeah. What
are the main origins of those big blocks that you're bringing in on your paddle boards and stuff like that?
It's hard to pinpoint this precise industry, or if you take a drive around on the West Coast or even in around Vancouver, it's the floatation under the docks is where those big foam piles come from. Is what we've been seeing, and if you take a drive, you'll see it too. The vast majority of docks and flows out houses they're held up by these large foam blocks that move around easily and find their way to the West Coast and onto the beaches.
So someone has a small private dock and a storm comes along and beats it up. The stuff is just washed out into the ocean, and then it's free and breaking up.
Yeah, exactly. And like in Canada, we're a potential source, but on the West Coast, we're also seeing it's likely coming from other places as well. So the United States and overseas, and because it can move quickly and it's very has a lot of flotation in it, you can find its way to our shores as well.
Is some of it coming from the Japanese tsunami?
I would anticipate. Unfortunately, the blocks don't have any identifying markers or anything like that we've been able to tell. So it's hard to trace it back to its exact origin. But I would anticipate EPS is used as flotation throughout the world. So its sources would.
I saw from your website that in the summer of 2019, on the Brooks Peninsula alone, you collected 25 super sacks, each of which is 5 cubic meters of plastic and foam. And if you take the foam part of that, that's 125 cubic meters, which is 1 trillion, 1,000 billion little beads of breaking up. And that's just one summer's work.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's hard to get your head around when you think about that many beads and, that much of pollution out there that can be ingested by all the animals. And that's one little cleanup. There's cleanups that are occurring all over our coast that are removing 40 to 80% is EPS.
So one of the famous sayings, it's almost, if you live by a river and there's dead bodies floating down the river all the time or injured people, you don't just take them in and heal them. You go upriver and say, where are they coming from?
Yeah, exactly.
So what does it take to get this stuff banned in the marine environment?
We need a change in regulation. Unfortunately, it's so readily available and so cheap that there's not a lot of incentive for dock builders and owners and to stop using polystyrene. So I think we need to actually change regulation. A good step would be to have EPS listed on the priority substance list under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, and that would allow it to be reviewed for its toxicity in different environments and subsequent regulation to be applied. In addition to that, the government could create incentive programs to start to phase out the use of EPS in the marine environment and replace it with like polyethylene, like hard plastic air-filled floats as a substitute. Obviously, plastic is another issue, but if it's hard plastic filled with air, then it's a lot less of a pollutant than the EPS. I think those are great. And obviously, education is a key component as well. But I think you really need to have an incentive for people to replace what they currently have and then regulate any future use.
Education, I believe it captures the 5 or 10% of people willing to be caring about this. We'd be talking about, say, plastic shopping bags. That's been on the radar for 30 years, 40 years. And still, if a shop is not required to use them, they will carry on offering the free plastic bags just by sort of inertia.
Yeah.
And so I think education is critical, but I think the key education is the members of parliament and the civil servants who are responsible for this stuff, because they're the ones who have to sort of believe that, we need regulation for this. Yeah,
I know, exactly. And I think that this fits well with the G7's Ocean Plastic Charter. Ocean Plastic Charter was discussed at the last G7 meeting in France, and basically it's a commitment to start looking at different ways to use plastics in the ocean, including EPS. And so I feel like if Canada was led the charge on the regulatory component of this, then it should be a good influence for the other 26 countries that are involved in that.
So I dug into that charter this morning, and one of the clauses is for the collection management. It's under the heading collection management and infrastructure. It says work with industry and other levels of government to recycle and reuse at least 55% of plastic packaging by 2030 and recover 100% of all plastics by 2040.
Right.
But that assumes land-based recovery systems.
Right, yeah.
Once this thing is breaking up in the ocean, it's only you who are doing the recovering, and that's not you may enjoy it, but you also enjoy surfing and paddleboarding without doing all that, right? You can't be labeled the recovery system to enable industry to say, hey, the rugged coast, they've got it, they're recovering it. We don't need to worry. That's all wrong.
Yeah. No, exactly. I feel like the recovery component of it has to be, very similar to what's happening in province this year with the Clean Coast, Clean Waters initiative. There has to be large initiatives for recovery. to create an industry around it.
Yes.
Very similar to what the province is doing now. And I think that if we have that continuous funding for groups like ourselves and all the other NGOs and Indigenous groups,
yes,
to recover these products, then I think that's a good way to meet those recommendations that put forward.
But of course it's really good. But if the industry is releasing 100 tons of material every year and you recover 20, we're in a losing game.
Yeah, 100%. That's what we need regulation in conjunction with. Yeah,
yes,
you need to have both pieces of the puzzle.
If we knew that this is going to be entirely phased out within 5 years, because we're going to have a simultaneous tax on the actual styrofoam and a rebate, all the money from the tax would be a rebate for the air bubble, contained air bubble solutions that can still float but not break down.
Yeah.
Then you increase that tax steadily year by year, so that at some point people are going to say it's not worth my while, and after 5 years the tax is 100% or whatever it says, and you basically ban the stuff. I know you can't ban it overnight because the industry is producing it, there's jobs, and he's got to take time to do this, but 5 years is a reasonable goal to get the whole thing out of the water.
Oh, I think so, yeah, and it needs to happen quick. We're yes. finding it at a more steady rate. When we started doing this work back in 2017, we weren't seeing EPS as often. Now it's vastly the prominent substance we're finding.
To me, the model to use is the ozone depletion protocol. So back in the 1980s, no one knew there was a hole in the ozone layer. And there was the vague concern around it, but the NASA satellites or planes that are monitoring this were looking for amounts of ozone this small, and the ozone hole was so big they couldn't find it.
Yeah, right.
Then when they saw it, they realized that that's allowing toxic ultraviolet rays, which would basically wipe out all planet Earth if we didn't stop it. Canada took the lead to call the Montreal Protocol in 1987 and got the nations to sign on to the Montreal Protocol agreement to phase out this whole thing. It's still slow and still happening. But if Canada could take the lead, because we need a global protocol on this thing, and Canada could take the lead with federal legislation. If any other country is still doing it and it's just taking off, we just may be seeing the corner of this problem, and the impact is on the whole marine ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So does Rugged Coast, when you're sort of having a brewski after you've been paddleboarding, do you sit and talk about which members of parliament you need to talk to get change?
Yeah, we definitely, we bat those around, but those conversations more take place with a BC-wide working group that we're part of. It's called the BC Marine Debris Working Group. And so it's a conglomerate of all of the main organizations that participate in beach cleanups and advocacy. And there's, our group is actually growing all the time. I think we're at 15 or 18 members now. So those types of conversations of how to, what we're seeing on the coast collectively, and what we think we should do about it collectively, and who we should talk to, happen at that working group.
So if I was a fly on the wall at that working group, would I be frustrated or really pleased by the kind of discussion going on?
Oh, I think that you'd be very pleased, actually. Yeah, no, it's a very constructive group. A prime example is the provincial government is releasing the CCCW funding initiative, which is $9.5 million for this year. And in that working group, we have all the main players, like very key players that would be leading cleanups on the coast. And we all, for this funding, we all work together to see, what areas people were interested in working in, and then partner with all the organizations that are working in those areas to submit joint applications. And even, Guy, I think you're aware of a briefing note that we're going to collectively be sent up to the Prime Minister's office to draw attention to the EPS issue and what we're finding as a collective group in British Columbia on our coast, and some solutions to the problems.
Right. Forgive me if I'm being boring, but is the working group asking for a ban on EPS in the marine environment?
We are, yeah, we are. We're from what we're seeing on the coast. It's our number one issue and our number one concern as a marine debris pollution item, and we see the only solution moving forward is a ban on the substance.
Yeah, and do you have a date when you want to have that ban in place by?
We don't. Sooner the better. But we're hoping to. The Prime Minister's office actually had originally where this briefing note that we sent up started from was he expressed interest in meeting with our group, and so we decided to prepare a briefing note to inform them of our group and of course the key issue that we're finding.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping that if we do have that conversation, we can talk about solutions and dates and kind of urgency about that.
The reason why the Montreal Protocol on ozone depletion was successful, whereas the climate treaties are really struggling, there was an alternative. There was a non-ozone depleting gas, the hydrofluorocarbons available. And you have an alternative too. I mean, you have, what would you call, how do you name the air bubble, things that I clumsily call air bubble floats? What would you call them?
I think we had a name for it. I think it was alternative. Here, I'll look it up. I have the briefing note in front of me.
Alternative flotation device.
That's right. I think that's what we were called. Yeah, alternative. Just alternatives. Yeah, alternative flotation device works well.
you need to brand the solution and give it real publicity, and so that people know what it is.
That's a good idea.
And I think you need to. I mean, show how it can work under a dock, how it can work on any ocean application. And probably last longer. Maybe I don't know what the benefits are of it, but the solid plastic coating around the edge, it's going to have to be at least a 1/4 inch thick, right? That's not going to break. It's a 1/1,000,000th of the impact of this stuff.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, and a
fish can't swallow a big chunking bit of black plastic like that, but these tiny beads, fish eggs.
Yeah, exactly. And the thick plastic takes quite a while to break down. And so it provides opportunity for recovery, whereas the foam, when it's released, it breaks down very quickly, and we don't have enough time and human power to pick up all the little beads that are on the beach, unfortunately. But we can pick up the big pieces of plastic.
I think it was Paul Martin who headed up the Montreal Protocol when that first started. But and Keith Martin was an MP down in Esquimalt who was still very active in realms. You need some champions.
Yes.
In Parliament who will say, and so Canada can get a real global plus if Canada was to initiate the global treaty making conference on this stuff. Is it possible that could happen?
I think so. Absolutely. I think we have a great political representation right now, and we have good influence on the global scale. I think it's a perfect time to make this a key platform or a key issue and to bring it up to a global scale. I think it's absolutely perfect timing.
So let's go. We've got 5 minutes or so left. Getting back to your Rugged Coast Research Society, how many paddleboarders on the surface do you have actually doing the good work?
We have about a 10-person core team, but on various cleanups we expand up to around 20. But we're growing every day, Guy. We have people emailing us wanting to get involved every day, and so we're actually right now we're fundraising for a new landing craft, 32-foot landing craft to help transport debris, as well as volunteers. And so we're fundraising for that right now. We've got the hull purchased through the Stanley DeVos Fund, bought us the hull, and we got to get motors, and we have a little ways to go. But the Stanley DeVos Fund is also offered to match dollar for dollar any donations that goes towards that. So it's a good opportunity for fundraising right now. So
if the viewers want to chip in and help out with your work, what do they do?
The best is to look at our website. Very clear there. Marine plastics is kind of our main focus right now, but cleanups and mapping. But we are looking to do more education. I've done a few classroom talks and things like that, and so on our website kind of shows what all the little components of our society that we touch on, and how to get involved and how to support if anyone does want to support us or sponsor. A neat thing that we're offering with the landing craft, if there's any companies out there that want to help out, that we'll put their logo on the side of the boat, and we'll be running around that boat all summer long. So great advertising for any companies that want to help out.
Have you found a marina yet that's willing to get fully on board and sort of tell all its marina anchorages that they got to change their ways?
We haven't yet. No, we're gonna be. That's next on the advocacy list and trying to build those partnerships, no question.
So let me drop a hint. The Oak Bay Marina is doing some big thinking about re-expansion and development at the moment. It's going before Oak Bay District Council this week or next week to discuss this stuff.
Okay.
And it may be you can slip something in that any future developments, the Oak Bay could have a local bylaw in Oak Bay saying all future developments can't use expanded polystyrene. That would be quite easily done, actually, unless someone tells them, oh, it's the water, it's a federal jurisdiction, you can't do that. But then is a dock federal or municipal or provincial jurisdiction?
I think provincial is my understanding is the provincial would regulate, because it's attached to the shoreline. They would have a water tenure leasing that off the province. But when it comes in to like the pollution drifting off into the shoreline, then it's a bit of a gray area.
I think it'd be interesting to write a letter to Oak Bay Council and ask if they can have a bylaw, prohibiting this in any future marine expansions in Oak Bay.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. No,
and Tofino is another natural, obviously.
Yes.
Tofino eucalyptus. They're clearly,
Yeah, I think that all of those would be good sells. And even if we did a bit of a fundraising campaign or something like that, just to get the ball started, because flotation's expensive, and doing those refits are very expensive. So there needs to be some incentives. Yep. But partnering with some leaders.
But if you also partner with the provincial government as a trial project, so they give grants, same as they now give grants for heat pumps, gave grants for alternative flotation devices. So the first generation of changers find it easier, and that starts to bring the cost down as well as the industry that makes them, got on board.
Yeah, no, that's good suggestions, Guy. No question. I'll bring that forward.
So let's wrap this up. We got a minute. Tell us about an amazing day out on the water.
Amazing day. Oh, there's too many. Well, I think one of my favorite days on the water was actually at Brooks Peninsula, 2019. I was out there with our crew of about 10 people, and on this trip we were obviously doing a big cleanup, but we brought all of our families. And so we had my young daughter there, and all of our friends had their families there as well. And coming back from a long day of boat full of garbage, and you come to the beach and you find your family there enjoying the splendors of British Columbia, and just puts it all into perspective of why we're actually doing what we're doing. It's for the next generations. It's it's for everybody in Canada to enjoy and to try to be part of this world.
And this summer, big plans?
This summer we have big plans. Yeah, we've put in 2 applications, or we're part of 2 applications for cleanups from basically Nanoose to Victoria. We're 13 partners that we're working with on that application. So hopefully we get it. And then on the West Coast, we're part of a big group application to do a big swath of basically the whole West Coast of Vancouver.
Yeah. And this is outdoor fresh air. It's pretty COVID friendly stuff, right?
It's very COVID friendly, yeah, and it's really good job creation as well, because we can work in little pods, and we can hire tour operators and kayak guides and things like that to have the skills to operate in that work and are out of work right now. It's a good opportunity.
So this is fantastic. I need to wrap up now. So thanks for doing this work. This is, I think, the beginning of something. We need a nationwide drive, a global drive to eliminate this. Just to remind you that 1 cubic meter block has got 8 billion tiny particles in it, cells, each of which could be seen as a fish egg. That just blows my mind, the volume of that. So thanks, Renny. Thanks so much for this.
No problem, Guy.
Cool. So my name's Guy Dauncey. You've been watching Change the World. Tune in next week for another bit of biting, scintillating, visionary, determined discussion. Thanks then. Bye-bye.